So yeah, so you can set up a Samba share if you want to do that. VirtualBox also has shared directories if you want to set that up as well. Basically, I want you guys to be as comfortable as possible with a normal development environment. How many of you guys have done some Symfony framework stuff before? And easy publish 5, if you've done things using the new system, that counts. So how many people have done some Symfony stuff before? Okay, good. Okay, awesome. A few of you. Also, even though there are 2 of us helping, you guys outnumber us a lot to a little. So as we go through things, if you get things working, if it's working for you, check your neighbor, see if it's working for them, work together, meet your neighbor, help each other out. So we'll start in just a second. I want to go around and make sure everyone has a comfortable environment. This is going to be all coding, no slides stuff. And if I get too excited and talk too fast, you guys can say, whoa. I do that a lot. I'm going to say this for people that are on Windows, for setting up the share. If you go to the My Computer, there's a Map Network Drive button up there, and that's what you're going to go to. I'm going to write up some notes here real quick, because I think this is the last little step. The good news is this is taking a little longer in the first workshop. We're going to reuse this for every other workshop. So you guys will have the network drive set up, and then you can edit things for every workshop after this. There we go. So I'll walk around and help. But this is the information. The map network drive is the key, and that's the connection string you can use to connect. So the 2 things you're looking for is, 1, you should be able to bring up, you should have this share set up or some way to edit the files on the VM. And if you want to see if the virtual machine is working, it probably is. That's the URL that's the URL where our site is that we're going to work on. So it's that sfbasics.ezsc. It should bring up an error page, but the error page should be really pretty. There should be a little Pac-Man ghost up in the upper left.
Exception detected.
Yeah, like that. See the little Pac-Man ghost up there, exception detected. It's very happy. If your error looks angry, it's not a good error, and we'll help you out. Other slash, yeah. Make something up. I'm going to put that into the gist. Very nice, yeah. It's always a challenge. All right. Cool. So I have that up on the gist if anybody needs it. If you are on Ubuntu and want to set up a mount point, I just added that code that you can kind of see on the bottom to the gist. So in the meantime, if you have things working but you don't have a mount point set up, we can work on that. But for now, you can edit it inside the virtual machine. And Sasa is going to go around and can help you guys set up that mount point if you want that mount point, if you are on Ubuntu. If you're on Windows, I think everyone on Windows has got it set up, so that's good. Awesome. All right. Okay, so setup stuff on the first day is always not as much fun. But this is good. So now we can actually move forward into things. So this is going to be all you guys coding. You'll notice my slides here are very informal. I'm going to give you guys kind of ideas on what we're going to build. And then I'll help you, but we'll also use the documentation. And we're basically going to build a real Symfony application, or at least start building a real Symfony application. So we're going to do things, and then I'll explain them kind of as you guys finish doing things. So sometimes I will give you instructions, and you may not know what I'm talking about. This is okay. We'll go to the documentation together. We'll learn about the concepts together. So this is good. So don't expect, if I give you directions for it, to necessarily make sense completely. But if I do say, do something, and it makes no sense to you, it's cool. Just raise your hand, and we'll help out. So we don't have any slides before this on purpose because we're short on time. So the first thing in Symfony is that everything in Symfony is a bundle, which is kind of like a plugin. I don't care what system you've used before, every system has the idea of a plugin. So if you want to build a feature, you put it in a plugin. In Symfony, it's called a bundle. A bundle is nothing more than a directory where you put things. So you'll hear this word bundle. It's just a directory, and we're going to put some code in that directory. So what you guys have right now is a blank Symfony project. So if you, on your own, went and downloaded Symfony, this is what you would have. It doesn't have any URLs, any pages yet. It's just a blank install. So the first thing we need to do is actually add a bundle. So here, and also, these slides here, you guys have them inside of your code. So if you want to pull up the slides, there's a slides directory, and you can open up the slides. This one is, you'll see it, you can find the slide that matches this. They're all done by steps, so 01 dash 02 dash. So you guys can read it off here, or you can just open up and look yourself. So step one is we need to actually add a bundle, okay? And these are the steps to do that. But basically, we're going to create a couple of directories, create a file, and then register that with Symfony. So I'm going to kind of like walk you guys through this, and we're going to kind of start getting into things. So first of all, if you guys look at your Symfony directory structure, what directories do you guys see? What are the directories in the project? Perfect. So there was about 5 or 6. The only 2 that you need to worry about are app and source. App is for configuration. Source is where your code is going to go. Almost all of your code is going to go into source. And in fact, bundles live in source. So first thing is we're going to create a new file, src/app bundle. So you'll need to create a new directory called app bundle, and then a new file inside of there called appbundle.php. And if you're not looking, if you don't even see a source directory, then raise your hand. We'll make sure that you look at the right spot. But go ahead and create that file. In the world of Symfony, or the world of Easy Publish 5, or any of these worlds, every time we create a file, a PHP file, it's going to have a class inside of it. We really only create PHP classes. So if I say create a file, you automatically know there's going to be a class inside of there, and the file name and the class name are going to match. So when I say create this appbundle.php file, you guys know that there should be a class inside of it called appbundle. So go ahead and create a class inside of this called appbundle. I'm going to code some of this up here in a second, but I want you guys to try it out first. How many of you guys have some experience using PHP namespaces? Okay, a few, but not everybody. Okay, cool. So also, the reason I have such simple slides is so that I can actually code up there with you guys. So that's why we're looking at a text file here. So you're going to create something that looks like this. Now, in the kind of newer PHP world where we use namespaces, so I said every file has a class in it. So appbundle.php has an appbundle class. Every PHP class has a namespace above it. We don't have time to talk too much about namespaces, but we can talk more after if you are new to them. But basically, every time you have a class, you have a namespace, and the namespace will match the directory structure that you're in. So what's people that have done this thing before, what's the namespace going to be on this class? Who said it? Nice, yes, appbundle. So quite literally, you'll always have a class, and you'll always have a namespace. This one's a little confusing. because you have a class name that's the same as your namespace. You have app bundle here because you're in the app bundle directory. So your namespace always matches your directory structure. This is called app bundle because you're in an app bundle.php file. So the class name matches the file name. This is a weird spot where you have a file name that's the same as a directory name. So the only thing that Symfony needs to have a bundle is it needs to have a directory, and it needs to have this one bundle file inside of it. Now the only requirements in this bundle file, by the way, this bundle file is going to be very underwhelming. Symfony needs this to register the bundle, but you're not about to see anything too impressive yet. All you need to do with this file is make it extend Symfony's core bundle class, and I'll kind of explain why in a second. So again, this uses namespaces. I'm going to see if anybody knows. So this needs to extend bundle. But that's a Symfony core bundle class. And so we need a use statement for it. So anytime you reference a class name, like a Symfony core class name, you need a use statement for it. Does anybody happen to know what the use statement is for this? You should not know it magically. I'm just wondering if somebody magically does know it. Does anybody have it?
Probably Symfony/core/.
You got it, yeah. Yeah, you guys both got it, yeah. How did you get that, Bruno? Bingo, yes. Yes. The magic way that you would have known that is autocomplete. If you're using an IDE, which not everyone loves IDEs, but I do. If you're using an IDE, you should be able to say extends bundle, start typing bundle, and it'll autocomplete it for you. Symfony has a lot of long class names, and so if you do use an IDE and you use its auto-completion, you're going to save a lot of time. So again, there's no way that you were supposed to know that. Either you use your auto-completion, or in the real world, you guys would be following along with the Symfony documentation, which would tell you all of this. So don't say, how the heck did he know to do that? This is just, that's just what the class name is there. So right now we have a directory with a single file in it, very, very underwhelming. But this is what forms a bundle. All we need to do now is plug this into Symfony. So remember, we're going to work in two directories, the app directory and the source directory. So you guys should see inside of your app directory a file called appkernel.php. The app kernel is both the most important class in Symfony or Easy Systems, or Easy Publish, and also not important at all. The app kernels is the heart of the application. But the only thing that you ever do in this file is tell Symfony about your bundles. So we just created a new bundle called app bundle. And in order to tell Symfony about this bundle, we need to open up that class and instantiate a new instance of our class. So you'll see what I mean. Open up that file. Again, I'll show you guys in a second, but I want you to do it first before I actually show it. Open up that file and you should see a big list of bundles that are already registered inside of there. It should say new something/something/something.
It's an array of bundles.
Exactly, it's an array of bundles. Yeah, it's like bundles left equals array. You want to add this bundle, you want to instantiate this new bundle inside of that array. So you'll kind of go to the bottom of that bundles array, and then you'll do new something/something. And I'll ask you guys what that's going to look like. So again, this step is just telling Symfony about our bundle. So we need to instantiate our new class. So what's the code going to look like here? This is again somebody who's a little bit more familiar with PHP namespaces will know this. Good. When you have that, you should be able to refresh the page and get the same silly looking error. If you get a mean looking error, it's a bad thing. You should refresh the page. It should still say, you know, exception detected, no route found, but if you mess something up, you'll get a really bad looking error. If you're new to namespaces, PHP namespaces, because our class had the, I'm going to mention this briefly, but I'll mention it again later. Because our class has a namespace called app bundle, its full name is really app bundle / app bundle. I know, it's a weird example because they're exactly the same. So that's why we'll talk about namespaces a little bit more later if that's confusing you. But the point is that this is actually the full class name right here of our class, app bundle / app bundle. Oh, and by the way, if you guys are, for people that have done a little bit more namespaces in Symfony, at the bottom of most slides I have like a little expert section. So if you're getting through things quickly, make sure you open up the slides and go to the bottom and actually kind of do some extra credit stuff. I won't always show it up here at first, but it's inside those files. Cool. Do we have the same happy error? Yes. Inside a slides directory of the code itself. Yep. Oh, cool. Okay, so I think we're just missing the extends bundle part. Yep. Class app bundle extends bundle. Actually, not there. Right up there. Yeah, right there. Extends bundle. That'll do it. That's exactly, that's the ugly looking error I'm talking about. Pretty error. Oh, yeah, yeah. I see that all the time, yeah. I think you're the same thing. Yeah, you need to add opening PHP tag. Inside of the bundle, the app bundle file. Yep. Yeah, if you ever get a weird error and you see your code printed at the top of the page, then we forgot the opening PHP tag. If you guys follow along with the official Symfony documentation at some point in the future, we don't show the opening PHP tags. We just decided not to. So make sure if you copy and paste a file, you do the opening PHP tag. Yes, nice. Cool. All right, I'm going to keep going forward. At every step, at every slide also, you'll see a little link on top that says if you got stuck, like if you didn't finish the previous step, I have a link with some code that can help you move up using Git to catch up. So I'm going to try to move through things somewhat quickly. If we leave you behind, we can definitely catch you up. So this should be like really underwhelming. You should be thinking like, this is really stupid. I don't understand what we just did. Why are we doing this? Because we've created a bundle, which is just a directory, and it's empty. It hasn't given us anything yet, so we really haven't done anything yet. But I wanted you guys to at least kind of create the bundle and kind of go through that process. All of your code in Symfony is going to live in a bundle. Historically in Symfony, you would create one bundle for every feature. You'd have like a product bundle and a admin bundle and a user bundle for authentication and things like that. More and more in the Symfony world, we're creating less bundles. And then in some cases, we just kind of, for an entire application, we'll just create one bundle called app bundle. The name is not important. And we'll put everything inside of that one bundle. So you can choose to create 5 bundles or just have one bundle. It's like any other system, right? You could create one plugin and put all of your code in it, or you could create 5 plugins. But more and more, we're creating this one bundle. So this is not a process that you'll go through very often. In fact, if you just have one bundle, then you'll never have to do this again in a project. We'll just put all of our code inside of this bundle. So I'm going to go to the next file. All right, so we're going to create kind of a hello world style page in Symfony. And actually, I'll explain this afterwards. So our goal is to have a URL, like something like /random/10. And then because we had 10 in the URL, our page is going to print a random number between 0 and 10. Or if we go to /random/100, you know, between 0 and 100. Got the idea? So this is really kind of the core and heart of what Symfony does, is kind of help us build these pages. So I'm going to make that a little bigger. By the way, my name is Ryan. I didn't introduce myself. I work on the Symfony documentation, which is why I'm going to send you guys to the Symfony documentation for this one step here, because it's explained fairly well. So that link right there, that bit.ly link, takes you to a page in the Symfony documentation. Or if you want to Google for it, it's a chapter called Creating Pages in Symfony. But basically, if you follow, I want you guys to follow along with steps 1 and 2. And you can stop listening to me and just start reading the documentation if you want. But again, our goal is to create a very basic page. And actually, let me ask you guys a question. When I say the term route or routing, how many people understand what a route is? Good, okay, about half, okay, like sort of half to 2/3 of you. So for the rest of you, a route is a page. When you use any framework, it doesn't matter if it's Ruby on Rails, if you want a page like /contact, you're going to have a route for that page. So in any framework, the first step to creating a page is to create a route. And that's what you'll see in step 1 there, is to create a route for this new page. One of the cool things about learning, I mean, really any framework, but Symfony is very good at this, is that all the concepts that we're learning are global across all frameworks. So when I say route, you can talk to like I said, a Ruby on Rails developer about routes. They understand what routes are. When we do stuff with classes and namespaces, well, classes and namespaces obviously are the same across any PHP project. So when you learn Symfony, you're learning a lot of concepts that are going to span across lots of different technologies. So follow along with step 1 and step 2. Our goal is to get a little page that gives us a random number. There is extra credit on this one as well. And I'm going to explain some of what you guys are doing afterwards. So this is definitely one of those things where if you're new to a framework especially, that you might not understand exactly what you're doing yet, but that's okay. Get it working and then we will explain it afterwards. Oh, and also, this is probably, you guys probably already realized this, but the example is working with, I think, a Acme demo bundle. Our bundle is called App Bundle. So feel free to copy and paste all the code from the examples here, but we need to be smart enough to change Acme demo bundle to App Bundle. So it's not exactly a copy and paste. We need to do a little bit of thinking here. There are also a lot of shortcuts in Symfony for doing things. I'm not showing you any of those yet. So we are doing things the manual way so that we can learn how it works and then we can use shortcuts later. That's my disclaimer. If we were actually developing something, we would use some tools to make this even faster.
No tabs in the YAML file?
Yeah, no tabs in the YAML file. Most editors convert it for you.
I don't want that.
What's that? I think you gotta talk to the Ruby guys. At least it gives you a clear error. I remember when I started with Symfony a few years ago, the error was totally crazy. So you will create a couple directories inside of your app bundle. You'll have an app bundle /resources/config directory. So don't expect there to be directories there. You will create a few directories. So your directory structure will look like that. The documentation also has this extra directory called Acme, which don't worry about that. We're actually shrinking. The directory structure we're using is actually a little bit smaller than the one you see inside the docs. If you have questions, you can yell at me or Sasha. If it doesn't quite make sense yet, that's actually okay. All right, most of you guys have this working? We're going to talk through a couple of the things we just did. So Symfony can be, like anything, a very complex machine. But what Symfony really does at its core is very, very simple. In fact, what you guys have just done is 50% of Symfony. Symfony aims to be nothing more than, well, in its initial part, nothing more than something that helps you create pages, something that helps you create routes, something that basically maps a URL like /random/5 to some code. So that's what's happening right now. You guys, when we go to /random/5, there's a function you have all created. Symfony calls your function, and inside that function, you guys are returning a random number. So go to a URL, it calls a function. That's the essence of any framework in any language, is that mapping of route to a function where we write our code. That function is called a controller. If you've done stuff with frameworks, you're familiar with that term. But when I say the word controller, just think that's a function where I build the page. Now in the web world, yeah, that one right there. In the web world, our job, whatever language you're in, is to understand the incoming request and return a response. We don't always think about that in the PHP world, but it's all about just, hey, let me look at this request. What URL are they trying to access? Okay, let me build a page, contact form, whatever, and return that as a response. So a framework's job is to kind of help you with that process. So, there you can find, yeah. Right there. I'm going to copy that over here as well for reference. So what you guys just did was when you go to create a page in Symfony, there's just two steps. First, you need to define a route, which is what you guys did in the YAML file. You guys all have something. I'm actually going to open it up. Actually, I'll type it right here. You guys all have something that looks like this inside of your route. So every time you have a page in Symfony, there's a route for that. And when Symfony boots, it has this long list of routes that it goes through to figure out what page is being loaded. That right there, that path key, defines the URL to your page. It's sort of, again, this is something that's the same in every framework. So as you guys can already see, the URL to our page is /random/anything. So the curly brace limit is just a wildcard. Cool? So the first step to creating a page is always creating that route. Now you guys actually modified 2 routing files, right?
Yeah.
You didn't need to do that. I told you to do that, but you didn't need to do that. When Symfony loads, it says, I need a list of all of the routes in the system. Because it needs to load all of the routes. Maybe we have 100 pages. It needs to load all of the routes to figure out which one the user is accessing right now. We only have one route right now, but in the future we'd have lots of routes. To do that, it loads only one configuration file, which is app/config/routing.yaml. So the so Symfony loads and says, I need routes. It reads that file. If you guys want to, it's not necessarily a bad idea. You could put all of your routes, and by routes, I'm talking about this thing down here, this, you know, the thing with the path. You could put all of your routes in this one file and be done with it. You could have 100 of these routes on there. That's fine. Historically in Symfony, instead of doing that, you'll also have a routing.yaml file in your bundle. And then inside of your app config routing.yaml, you'll import it. So when you guys look at your app/config/routing.yaml, it has like a little resource key. That is not defining a route. That's not defining a page. That's basically just like almost like a PHP include. It just says, hey, go read this other routing.yaml file for routes. So when Symfony loads, it doesn't automatically search your project for these routing.yaml files. It only reads this one file. And then if you want to, you can have this one file read 10 other routing files, but you know, but you don't have to do that. Yeah.
But isn't it more logical and better in a development sense to have a config.yaml file in every bundle you create?
Yeah, or like a routing.yaml file in every bundle. Great. Yeah.
Because
such a good question. It's a hotly debated thing in the Symfony world. It's about to get even hotter. Historically in Symfony, we create 5 bundles: product bundle, admin bundle, user bundle for each feature. And when you do that, logically, it makes a lot more sense to have a routing.yaml file in each bundle. You have a routing.yaml file in your admin bundle with all of your admin pages, a routing.yaml file in your user bundle for all of your registration, things like that. More and more people are creating just one bundle. And once you have one bundle that has everything in it, it's sort of the same to have a routing.yaml file in your app config directory or a routing.yaml file in your app bundle. Because your app bundle sort of is your application. There's not like a separation of the features anymore. So it's sort of, they're the same. And whatever you want to do is totally fine. So the point is, all of your routes come from this one file, and then you can import other files if you want to. In fact, if you guys, there's lots of open source third-party bundles in the Symfony world, you know, to bring in functionality. If you bring in a bundle that gives you like registration functionality, the way that you get access to the routes that that bundle has is you actually add an import in your routing.yaml file that says go import this routes from this bundle over here. So Symfony doesn't automatically find them. It's all kind of starting with this one file. Okay, one other thing I want to talk about here is, so once Symfony matches your route, the whole point of routing is to know what function to call. Now inside of your guys' routing here, you have this weird underscore controller thing, which I'm just going to put in a different spot for space. Is that how it looks, I think? Yeah. Yep. Okay, this is a problem. Because it's kind of this is one of those things that is super Symfony specific shortcut thing, so I don't like it, but it's really important to understand. What Symfony wants when you match a route is, like I said, what function do you want me to call? PHP function, which is where we're going to build the page. So Symfony out of the box uses this weird 3-part syntax. This is actually a function name, sort of. What this maps to internally, when we use this 3-part syntax, internally Symfony expands it to this. Oh, my bad. So we write that little 3-part syntax. That's what you use for underscore controller. And Symfony says, okay, I understand. That's a very Symfony specific shortcut to reference that class and that function. So it does 2 things here. It automatically assumes that your controllers are going to live in a controller directory. And then it suffixes, see how I had only random in our string there? It suffixes it with the word controller. And then the function name there is index in the route, but it calls it index action. So there's some kind of standard sort of being forced upon you right there. This is not difficult. It's just a very Symfony specific shortcut type of a thing that you're going to run into. Now, if you don't want to use Symfony's specific shortcuts like this, there's no reason not to, but that's totally fine. You guys could actually put that long string right there as your underscore controller key in your route, and it would totally work. So you could just do your own thing. This little 3-part shortcut is what you're going to see. It's kind of confusing because you're like, what the heck does that mean? It's just a shortcut syntax to expand. So really, with that little syntax, Symfony now knows what function to call. It calls our index action function. What are we doing inside of the index action function? What's your guys' code doing? I know we all copied and pasted it, but what are we actually doing inside of our controller function, our index action function? What was that? Yes. Yeah, generate a random number. And what are you returning from the controller? Bingo, a response, yes. And this is the kind of a core fundamental thing in Symfony. Your controller, Symfony doesn't care anything about your controller, but it must return a Symfony response object. Because again, our job as developers is always to return a response. So you don't echo content or something from here. You create this response object. The response object is actually really simple. The only thing it has in it is what content do you want, and then status code and headers if you want to set them. But basically the response is an object that represents the text you want on the page. So you always return a Symfony response object. Cool? How many of you guys have heard of the Silex micro framework? A couple of you. Yeah, good, good. Okay, I want you guys to Google for that. I'm going to do it up here as well. So it's Silex, or S-I-L-E-X. Go ahead and Google for that. If you're really lazy, you don't have to, because I'll show you. I'm going to copy it over here so it's a little bit easier to see. Actually, let's do this. There we go. So Silex is a framework built on the same components as Symfony. But it's a micro framework. But if you've heard of a micro framework before, it's a framework where you try to fit everything in literally inside one file. And you can make it bigger after that, but it's entire framework inside one file. All of this, let's see here. This code here is a functional application. You could actually go to /hello/Ryan, and it would actually say hello Ryan. So this is it's not generating a random number, but this is almost exactly what we have in our project right now, except it's in 4 lines of code. This is using the same exact code and components from Symfony. This is using Symfony under the hood. I want to show you this for 2 reasons. One, this might be something you want to use in the future if you have a small project. It's very easy to get set up. And 2, just to highlight that this is all a framework does, is it maps a URL, a route, to a controller. In this case, a controller is not some index action that lives inside of some random controller class. It's just an anonymous function. So controllers in the Symfony framework are always inside of a controller class, but really they could be anything. They could even be anonymous functions like this. Symfony doesn't care. You just have to return a Symfony response object. And actually, Silex lets you cheat. Notice this is not returning a response object. Silex lets you cheat like that. You can just return text. But in Symfony framework, we always use return a response object. Does anybody have any questions? It was kind of like the big theoretical part. So routes define URLs. Those point to controllers. And controllers, we return a page. And Symfony does not care, and to be fair, most frameworks don't care, how you build that page. So inside of your index action, if you want to make a curl request to a big giant Java app that actually gives you the HTML, cool, do that. You can use no other part of Symfony if you want. Do whatever you want to do inside of that controller to return the page. In fact, and it's been a while since I've actually looked inside of it, but I'm almost positive this is basically how Easy Publish works. Easy Publish has some routes. Those routes point to controllers, just like Symfony. But inside of those controllers, then Easy Publish starts using its content engine to look up things in the database and use its own rendering system. But under the surface, it's just routes and controllers, just like we're saying. All right, enough of that theory stuff. Awesome. All right, next. So now I'm going to show you guys a slightly shorter way to do things. So to be clear, what we are about to do is equivalent to what we just did in a second. So we're not about to add something new. I'm going to show you a different way to define a route. Okay? So right now we have routes inside of routing.yaml, our routing.yaml file. I'm going to have you remove or comment those out, and we're going to define a route right inside the controller. So first thing here is remove the route that you added in routing.yaml. That's the routing.yaml that's inside of your, actually you could comment either of them out, but comment the route that you have inside of the routing.yaml file that's inside of your bundle. How do you comment things in YAML? Hash, yeah, hash pound, I heard both of them. Yeah, that little hash or pound key, you can put that at the beginning of every line if you don't want to actually remove it. So what's going to happen if you comment out that route? If you comment out that route and refresh, what error should we get? What's that? Yes, no route found. So if you comment out that route and refresh, you'll get a no route found. That's Symfony's way of saying, hey, there's no page at this URL. And then, so that's good. So I want you to remove that and, hey, we don't have a page anymore. We broke it. Now, if you follow that bit.ly URL there, I'm going to make it a little bigger. Some of you are going to absolutely love what we're about to do, and some of you are going to throw me out of the room. This is a very controversial thing. We'll see. I'm actually interested to see what you guys think about this. You usually love it? I did have one room of developers. I think they were historically Java developers, and I showed them this, and like one of them was like, "Get out." He was mostly kidding, but he was like, "Get out. We don't like it." So go to that URL, and it's going to show you a way to build your route, because every page needs a route, but it's going to be right inside of your controller class. And it's going to be using something called annotations. What are annotations? I know at least some of you guys know. What's an annotation? Yeah, annotation is actually a PHP comment, except it's special because it's actually read as configuration. If you haven't seen it before, it's kind of wild, but in PHP you can put like comments in your code, and actually there's a layer that actually reads those comments as configuration. So that's what you'll do here. So follow that link and go to the documentation there. Actually, see, is this? And then go ahead and follow along with that. It kind of says, hey, put this above your code. You're not going to do anything to your index action. Your index action that returns the random number, it's perfect. Don't touch it. All you're going to do is add some comments above that function that define the route for that. So again, I showed you, we're doing things kind of the longer and harder way first, and now we're circling back to what is actually a slightly easier way to do things. So I'm going to code this up here with you guys. I have to cheat for a second, so I apologize. I'm about to move this screen so I can pull up the documentation. First thing you guys need is, I know this is too small to read, but I want you guys to have it on your screen. First thing you need is this use statement. It's an implementation detail, don't worry about it. But anytime you use annotations, these comments that are configuration, you'll have a use statement. So make sure you copy this use statement to the top of your controller class. That's not a detail I want you to worry about too much. Except don't forget it, or else it won't be any fun. Okay. So step one, I have the use statement. What's next? What other thing did you guys do? What's the next step to get this working? Yeah, the at route. And I know I'm rushing you guys because I'm saying, look at this documentation for 15 seconds and then tell me how to do it. So if you had a little more, if I let you guys have a little more time, you'd be able to read through this. That's the magic part right there. Make sure your comment has /**. You need 2 stars on the comments in order to be read as annotations. Notice I'm using the same URL as before, so this is creating the same page. And you should, if you put this, you should refresh that page and it should work again. Yeah, but you've been ahead the whole time. You're supposed to have the least problems. Oh, my bad. My bad. Instructor forgot a step. See, it's my fault, not yours. I forgot a step. The other step you need, I forgot about this little detail. Remember, when Symfony loads, I'm, as we say, like eating my own dog food right now, because I was telling you this 1 minute ago, then I forgot it myself. When Symfony loads, what's the one file that it reads to get routes? Then you go app/config/routing.yaml. That's still true. If you want to put routes inside of annotations like this, you need to go into that file and actually tell Symfony, go look at this controller class and read routes from it. It's not going to magically find it. So under the activation section, that's what it's saying. I'm actually going to bring this in. In the same way that we, inside of our app config routing.yaml file, we said, go load the routing.yaml file inside my bundle. Now we're going to say, go load routes from the controller class. So we're actually just kind of saying, hey, Symfony, when you load routes, go read this other source. So I'm putting some notes up here, but do read the documentation rather. I mean, it's all right in front of you, so you don't have to copy it off of up here. Oops. There we go, something like that. And it's quite simple in this case. Before our resource, when we wanted to load a YAML file, we just pointed it at the YAML file. We said, hey, I want you to load another YAML file. It lives in this spot. In this case, we can just point it at the controller directory. And basically, any annotations we put inside that controller directory, it's going to find. So we say, hey, look in the controller directory, parse through all of the PHP files in that controller directory. We only have one. We only have random controller, but in the future you might have 10 controller classes. And load the annotation routes. So that was a step I forgot. If you don't do this step, you won't get an error. It's just that Symfony won't see your new route, so you'll still get that route not found. Yeah, what are the advantages?
Do you see some advantages in using annotations over YAML? Do you feel more comfortable writing, reading it?
Bingo.
Yes, and maybe it's when you're looking the code, you look what you're actually doing, and you know how to visit your URL, you don't have to look at it in the YAML file. Maybe that's another advantage, for example.
Yeah, one of the #1 things that like I hear negative about Symfony is like the number of files that you have. And you, as you can see here, we're doing the exact same thing we did a second ago, except we've eliminated a file. And of course, like any system, once you know the system, having files doesn't bother you anymore. But Symfony can exist in a way where you actually have less files. And you'll actually see that it's something that's changing in the Symfony ecosphere right now. We're actually kind of changing best practices little by little to make Symfony smaller and smaller. Because remember when we looked at Silex, right? That was 4 lines of code. Just boom, that's it. So you can kind of do Symfony in a smaller way. So not everyone likes this, but it is very nice. What's really cool is, of course, that import we just added on the bottom there to routing.yaml. You will only ever add that one time in your entire project. When you need another page in the future, just create a new function and put your annotation above it, and you're ready to go. So use whichever one you want.
Search market doesn't want to change URL, you just override it out.
It's not simple, yeah. But that mostly affects like third-party bundles. Yeah. Yeah, the reason if we were building like an open source bundle we were going to share, we wouldn't use annotation routes because it actually makes them harder for an end user to override. So they would probably use YAML routes because there's some subtle reasons that makes it easier for us as users of that bundle to change the URL. But for our application, this is really simple. How many people like this better than YAML? How many people like YAML better than this? Okay. The one strong hand that went up was the guy you've already been doing some Symfony stuff, right?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. You just are extra advanced.
What I think is routing over YAML makes for better readability of the rules. I think this is just messy.
It's fair. Yeah, it's totally fair. Yeah. Yeah, they are.
We'll try one when you have huge projects when you're working on.
Yeah, you have a huge project. Yeah.
It's much easier to control.
Oh, and that reminds me of something else.
Can you still slide it? I can't read it.
Make it perfect. So one of the problems when you get a big project is, hey. Oh, is it coffee break? No, we're not taking a coffee break. I'm just kidding. No, I have to say one last thing, then we'll take a coffee break. They were like, what? So no matter if you use YAML or annotations, your project's going to get big, and it's going to be difficult to know what routes you have. Two things I want you guys to notice. One is at the bottom of every page, you should have it. If you go to your browser, you guys should have a web debug toolbar on the bottom. That's cute, isn't it? Nice. There's lots of information there. One of the pieces of information, I think if you hover over the number 200, I think there's a number 200 on the bottom with a green thing. If you hover over that, let me make sure I'm describing the right thing. Yes, if you hover over the number 200, it will show you what route you're currently on and what controller is currently being executed. So there's some information there. If you click that number 200, it takes you into the profiler. It takes over the whole page. This has a lot more information. It will show you database queries, logging information. On the left side, there is a routing page. It's about 5 or 6 down. There's a button called routing. And this will actually show you a list of all, well, more or less, of all of the actual routes that you have in your application, including the one that matched on this page. Okay, so all of the routes are being compiled into one spot that you can actually see. There's one other way to see routes, and it's actually even a little bit more common, but we use the command line for it. So there's 2 different ways to interact with our Symfony application. One is by going to the website, right? Going to /random/5 and hey, here's our site. The second way is via the command line. There's actually some command line tools with Symfony that it's mostly for kind of debugging and things like that. So if you guys go to your virtual machine, because you should have like a little terminal in your virtual machine, and make sure you move into the directory, which I think is is it projects? Workshops, thank you. There we go. Once you're in that directory, Symfony has a script called app/console. That's not a magic executable. There's actually a directory called app with a file called console in it. So this is you just executing a file called app/console. That app/console script is your way to interact with Symfony from the command line. You don't even need to know about this if you don't want to, but there's lots of good debugging, code generation tools, things like that inside of this. So one of the tools is called router:debug. So if you run that, you should see a list of all of your routes. Awesome. If you guys have that working, then go grab coffee, but come right back and we'll keep going. So go ahead and grab some coffee.